The Gospel according to Mark. 6 days later, after Peter confessed that Jesus was the Messiah and then turned around and denied Jesus' way of the cross, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And Jesus was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. Well, then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Let's make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say because they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud came a voice. "This is my son whom I love. Listen to him." Suddenly they looked around, and they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Humanity had risen from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord. Hi, St. Paul, Pastor Clark, good to be with you. This is the Gospel reading for this coming Sunday, which is Transfiguration Sunday, the Sunday before Ash Wednesday and the beginning of Lent. Always this story of Jesus on the mountaintop with Peter and James and John. You know, I just had a Zoom meeting with my spiritual director, somebody who often asks, how is God? Where is God for me now? What is God's presence? How is God's presence showing up in your life? And resonated with me, my answer and this story. Jesus doesn't say anything in these verses, despite the invitation from God, from the cloud, to listen to him. Jesus is silent in these moments. And, you know, in these days of grief after my dad's died, that's how I've been experiencing God's presence. Silence, not absence, but a silent presence, not flashy, none of these transfiguration type things, but just a quiet, steady, dependable kind of awareness of that presence that God has given me. And I'm grateful for. I'm grateful also for you and the many ways that you've expressed your condolences and support. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. You know, part of what the message here is, coming as it does right after Peter identifies Jesus as the Christ, the Messiah, as God, and then denies that his mission, his path on earth should lead to the cross. There's an affirmation here of what Peter had a hard time accepting. That's part of what the listen to him is all about. It obviously includes all of his other teachings and his life, but also specifically this thing of suffering, this thing of his death, his crucifixion. So part of what I think the overall message of this passage is, along with the whole gospel, is that salvation is transformation. You know, it's not just a rescue mission. You know, as if we could be pulled just out of a bad situation and put into a good one, and that we ourselves would be unchanged by that experience. Not at all. There is transformation is the way. There, the suffering, the suffering that Peter just could not imagine, the humiliation that Peter couldn't imagine of the cross. These this vision on the mountain it just affirms that yes, that suffering, that humiliation will be part of it. That difficulty will be part of it. But it is indeed a stepping stone in a sense. It's not the end. It's just a way to, as we hear at the end, a resurrection. And that the full meaning of this moment on the mountaintop won't be clear until Jesus' resurrection. The resurrection is the sign of Jesus's divinity, of the truth of his message, the reason to listen. Whether it's a personal transformation or a change in the communities we live in, or a transformation of the whole world. That seems to be the promise of this story, is that it's not just making things right in some static kind of a way, but in a way that leaves all of us and everything changed. We can look at it from the other way around too, meaning that none of our suffering is apart from this transformation. That there is no humiliation, that God does not just gather up by way of the cross, but just gather up every humiliation, suffering, every death, every ending, every failure, including our moral failures, our failures of courage, our failures of love. God gathers all of that up. Jesus gathered all of that up on the cross and uses those moments as turning points, fulcrum points, as the very place we fall down is where we strike gold, so that they're not wasted. And can we trust? The invitation here is to trust. No matter what we're going through at the moment, it's part of that great turning that is happening in Jesus. One of the reasons why Moses and Elijah are here is that they, we see that in their own lives, their own journeys of suffering and transformation. Moses himself was changed in the in two ways. One, obviously, in the obvious parallels of this passage are of him going up the mountain on Mount Sinai, having conversations with God, and then his face being changed and glowing, and the people, when he went back down the mountain, being afraid of him for that reason. There's a change. But the whole story of Moses and his life and his movement into leadership, his movement from running away to going back to the heart of Egypt, that's a transformation for Moses as well. Elijah also suffers, is persecuted, and he doesn't die. He's taken up, but there is a way in which the same path of their lives, the same pattern we see in Jesus's life, death, resurrection, a pattern of transformation, of order, disorder, reorder, new order. That same pattern is evident in Moses's life, in Elijah's life. I think maybe all of us can look back and see that. Whether no matter what stage of that transformational pattern we're in right now, the life or the death or the resurrection, trust it. Don't be afraid of it. That ultimately this cloud that overwhelms Peter and James and John, it is the presence of the God of love. It is an embrace of love. I know I can be afraid of love as of anything else. We all are. We all push away the very love that Jesus has to bring to us, the very love of the people in our lives. of the universe itself, the generosity of this planet. This is my Son whom I love. Listen to him. We get to participate in that love. We are also so loved. And it is that experience of being loved that opens our ears to hear and to follow this same way of the cross, the way of resurrection. Thanks be to God.